And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Thursday, December 26th, coming off of Christmas. 7-game DraftKings slate today. We've got 9 on FanDuel. At least I assume we have 9 on FanDuel. I'm saying that without having checked. I'm Josh Engleman, by the way. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Hope you guys had a great holiday. I did. Light work. Light work. The good one. But now, we're back to normal. I don't believe we have any days off left in this NBA season, and I think we're going to start getting some quality scheduling. Is exactly what we're looking for. Yes, FanDuel does have the 2 10 o'clock games confirmed. But I think we're going to be able to get into a little bit of an NBA rhythm now. Football's winding down. We're through the NBA Cup. We're through the holiday season. Now we're just going to get normal slates, I hope. And we have one here today. 7 games on DraftKings, all locked up by 8 o'clock. 2 late games for the FanDuel slate, but this could be a good one. Now, are the games any good today? Not really, but that's okay. We're here for DFS. That's all we could ask for. So if you guys are here, please hit that like button. It helps me out a ton. I'm ready to break this bad boy down. It feels like I haven't talked about a legitimate basketball slate in a minute. Like, obviously, yesterday was legit, but, you know. Feels different now. I'm pumped for today. I'm ready to talk some basketball. OKC Indy's a good game. Miami Orlando is not, but it could have been. Charlotte Washington's extra bad. Chicago Atlanta is great for DFS. Toronto Memphis, yuck. Brooklyn Milwaukee, yuck. Houston in this version and the New Orleans Pelicans, kind of yuck. But we're here. We're here to break it down. You guys have a good Christmas? / whatever it is that you guys do for the holiday season? I had a good day. Got myself a disc golf basket. Put up in the yard. Work on them putts. That's the plan. I think the sitting out, injuries, and shooting threes is killing the league. I heard the viewership is down, and I understand. Worst brand of basketball ever. Yeah, that's a take that I couldn't agree less with, but not surprising. Shooting threes, killing basketball. That right there is a take of someone that doesn't understand what's going on. Injuries aren't helping. They've existed forever. If people hate injuries, they should hate the NFL more. We get a lot more really shitty quarterbacks getting injured and having to bring in guys that don't belong there. But nobody seems to care about that. But sitting out, I get. These guys are playing a much different game than they played in 1982. Harder. These guys move faster. They run further. All of these things have made this game exceptionally more difficult than anybody had ever imagined back in the day. But no matter what people think here, these guys are moving at a faster rate of speed and moving significantly more than they ever did before. That takes a toll on the body. Takes a big toll on the body. The shooting threes thing, next level worst kind of thought process on what's happening here. When you say that we're shooting too many threes, what you're actually saying is, boy, I wish they continued to shoot more 18-foot twos from places that no one should shoot from. Because that's what happened here. The only thing that basketball has changed is now people don't take shitty long twos and they take more threes. That's a win. That's a win. If we're yearning for contested 18-footers on a Tuesday night, we're missing the plot here. We're missing the plot. Victor Wembanyama, confirmed good. That's very true. Jerry Mann, got 2 baskets in the yard. Yeah, I got one. I'll have one set up either later today or tomorrow. My mid-range game and my short-range putting game is terrible, so this is going to help me out a lot. Busy facts. They're just shooting bad shots. I would disagree. Some people, sure. But we can't act like they were shooting great shots before. Problem is, too many people who can't shoot threes are shooting threes. Yeah, I would disagree there too, for the most part. Lord King Guru, Wemby shouldn't be primarily shooting from the outside at his size. Yeah, I would disagree with that one as well. You should be shooting from wherever the spot is that you think you can get the most points. And if 7'4" Victor Wembanyama can take 10 threes a game and make 36% of them at 32% usage, that dude should be chucking up threes on a pretty regular basis, because you know what happens when he starts shooting threes? He's either getting an open look over the top of someone that is not able to contest his shot, or he's going to find a really nice passing lane to someone with a lot more space if they're trying to stop that. Yeah, we gotta. The easiest thing for someone to do is if Victor Wembanyama just goes down to the low block every possession. That's the worst thing he could do. If Victor Wembanyama can get to a point where he's unguardable from the 3 spot, he's going to score from literally everywhere. Unstoppably, I might add. Unstoppably. This dude's 20. He's not even 20. Well, you can't even have a beer after the game to celebrate, at least not in the United States. And he's already, arguably, and I mean this sincerely, arguably the second best player in basketball. You can make that case, and I wouldn't put up too big of a fight, because he's that good defensively. Not to mention 31.7% usage, 61% true shooting. 73rd percentile offensive rebounder, 95th percentile defensive rebounder. He's 76th percentile in assist rate. He's the best shot blocker in the league, and he gets himself some steals. Like, he's nuts. He's absolutely nuts. That dude should shoot from wherever the hell he wants. Wherever the hell he wants, because nobody can stop him. When you're 7'4" with his release point, all the 6'5" dudes in the world can close out on that. Don't matter. That's why you shoot from 3, because he can shoot over the whole league. The whole damn league. That dude's going to be a problem. We need to, all y'all that can pray that this dude stays healthy, because we want to see this. Because this dude is different. If you put every NBA player in an available draft, oh yeah, Wemby goes number 1 with a bullet. Your only option is Jokic, and I don't think it would happen at this point. John C. And not only is he as good as he is defensively now, it's going to be better next year. It's going to be better the year after that, barring health. Because the more you learn the timing, the more you learn the angles, just repetitions alone are going to break him for other people. Like, he's going to get to a point where he knows how to be everywhere. And that is going to get downright scary. You get another, especially with Castle out there on the perimeter, which I'm a big believer in his defense. But I mean, you get another dude out there that's like a little tenacious, and it starts to become a real problem. I'm very interested to see what they do over the next 18 months, because they have to accelerate their timeline. They've got a lot of dudes that they need to get rid of. And if they can turn them into something a little bit more manageable, like, if you can cash in on Jeremy Sohan now, I think you do it. Get off of Harrison Barnes if you can. Get off of Keldon Johnson if you can. Honestly, get off of Chris Paul if you can and start lining it up for next year. Because they're damn good. They're damn good. And it's, as long as Wemby stays healthy, it's not going anywhere. All right, guys, let's break down some basketball. Recency bias is such a funny concept. I'll bite, Justin Sports. What's the recency bias? Can we get Levine to San Antonio? I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, if I'm San Antonio, I'm aiming higher than that. If I'm San Antonio, I'm trying to legit go for it if you can. Now, who that ends up being, I don't know. But I'd want to aim higher than that. Like, I would disagree that Trae Young is the best option. I would be trying to get LaMelo before I got Trae Young, but I don't think Trae Young's the option. Not that I think it would be a problem. Clearly, he would look awesome doing this. I mean, him throwing lobs to Wemby would be bonkers. Someone said Wemby over Jokic based on the last 5 games. Gotcha. Yeah, there's something out there for them. I don't know if it's De'Aaron Fox. That seems like too much. Like, what you'd really love to do is be able to have, like, pried Cade Cunningham a year early. But that doesn't seem like it's really all that feasible. There's something out there. I mean, I would want LaMelo. I would want LaMelo. I would be hoping that he's sick of it. The problem is, seems pretty unlikely LaMelo Ball wants to go live in San Antonio. What about Fox? I mean, Fox certainly improves the Spurs. I'd be aiming a little higher than that if I could. Halliburton, I mean, I don't think Indy's moving him anytime soon. All right, let's break this slate down. What do y'all say? We got some time. We had to talk a little bit about Victor Wembanyama going bonkers on Christmas. I mean, SGA, yeah, that would be awesome. That one's not happening. That one's not happening. LaMelo's the guy I would want, just because of his size. LaMelo's a better Trae Young and 6 inches bigger than him. LaMelo's going to end up somewhere fun. He ain't going to play in Charlotte forever. King Rock Kid, there's basically no way Wemby could get to that. I think this is Shea's award to lose at this point, especially now that Luka is definitely not going to have a shot. I would be wanting to get on the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander MVP train because Luka's done. It's going to be Jokic, SGA, Tatum, Giannis. I don't really see how anybody's going to crack that 4-man group. Wemby could be in that top 5, but they won't win enough, I don't think. I think it's going to be really hard to not get it to Shai, assuming they win 60-plus games. I don't see any path for Tatum, David. I don't think Tatum can get ahead of SGA, nor should he. It all depends on how well Jokic... If Jokic can keep Denver out of the play-in, then I think he's probably got the best shot. But if Shea wins 60 plus, I think that's who's getting it. All right, here we go. Game number 1. Speaking of SGA, best player, best team narrative always gives him a shot. Well, that would imply that they're the best team, which at least by record they are not, which makes it a little bit trickier. And then, I mean, mostly for Tatum, he's just not as good as Shea. Yeah, John, obviously Jokic is just going to be there the whole year by doing his stuff. The wins that are going to matter. The wins will change everything. And let's talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shall we? Because he's the first guy up. OKC, first game we've got to talk about today. They're 4.5 point favorites in Indiana. 227 total. Nothing really to write home about here for OKC. We have no Alex Caruso, out with that left hip strain. Probably injured his hip carrying that giant bag of cash he just got. But there's some things that I like here for Oklahoma City against Indy because everybody else is available. We finally got Jalen Williams back. Jalen Williams with the Y. Ousmane Dieng is healthy again. Not that he's going to be soaking up too much playing time. I think it's pretty clear the best option you can get to here is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 10,300 on DraftKings. I have him 14% optimal, 34% boom score. That's a 34% chance of scoring 58 fantasy points, which is about what I think you would need out of him. I don't think Jalen Williams is that far off from OKC either in comparison to Shai. Jalen Williams, 8K, power forward only. Basically the same optimal and same boom rates. You don't need nearly as many fantasy points out of Jalen Williams as you do from Shai. I got it at 47. Speaking of something like that, where did it go? Because I know I saw it. Might have to scroll back further than I thought I would. King said, I've been studying the winning lineups in the NBA Classic. You have to be 15 to 20 points off the highest projected lineup. Well, that makes some sense. Think about it like this. I've got Shai projected for 51.5. Well, let's use Jalen Williams as the example. 40.5, 47.5. We're talking about 7 points higher with a target score in comparison to his projection. You spread that across 8 roster spots. You're going to be looking at, 40 to 50 points north. But yeah, you're looking for 6 or 7 fantasy points above projection for basically everybody. And you can give or take that depending on where they are in the salary tier and how high that regular number is. But yeah, that's sort of what you're shooting for each night. If Denver finishes with 50 wins, well, we could stop right there, John. I think we're going to have a hell of a time projecting Denver to get to 50 wins. Denver currently sitting at 16-12. 50 feels like a stretch. Now, if they get to 50 wins, I think Jokic wins it. I agree. I think they're going to struggle to get to 50. I think they're going to struggle there. I mean, look, the Thunder getting to 60, that's 60-22. They only have 5 losses right now. That's 17 more. Whereas Denver, going to be tight. They're on pace for 47. I think they're going to struggle to get to 50. Anyway, I got to get back to this slate. I could do this all day. I really need a show where I just don't talk about DFS. Hartenstein and Dort both look totally fine. I don't see a ton from OKC. It's really hard to want to go to your Case and Wallace, your Joes, your Mitchells, your Aaron Wiggins. Like, all those guys don't look all that good to me. It's really SGA, Jalen, and Hartenstein. Lou Dort a little bit. Shooting guard, small forward, 4,400. Not a great per minute dude, but we're also talking about only needing really like 30 fantasy points, and that's not all that crazy. But if I'm ranking these guys, it's basically in salary order. SGA, Jalen Williams, Hartenstein, and Dort. Now on the Indy side, we do have a Q tag on Miles Turner, which will be pretty damn important and could unlock a flat 3K Thomas Bryant. So that's going to be a spot you guys want to pay attention to. If we get Miles Turner out, Thomas Bryant is 3K, center only, and will be one of the most popular guys on the slate. Because he's a fantasy point per minute guy. If you give Thomas Bryant 24 minutes, he's going to be projected for 24 fantasy points. That's an 8x value. He'll be 50% owned if we get Miles Turner out. Now, there won't be much ownership at all coming into this Indy team. One, pace down spot against OKC. They lose 1.3 possessions below their average. Two, OKC's defense. Not exactly a team that we want to try and battle against. On the season, the Thunder are the number one defense. That's not going to get things done. 105.1 defensive rating. That's really good. So I don't have much from Indy. Halliburton looks the best. Mathurin, because of his positional eligibility, shooting guard, small forward, is probably my second guy here. And you could pick up shares of Siakam or Turner. Nembhard's playing a little bit better. But it's really hard to want to get to too much out of Indy here. Nobody, at the very least, no one is looking incredible. Nothing too wild here. So we'll go to game number 2. Now this one sucks. So this is Miami and Orlando. This is a 207.5 total. This is the lowest total on the slate by 5 points. And then if we ignore the second lowest total, it's 12.5. It's the second lowest pace. Only Brooklyn and Milwaukee is slower. But both of those games are ultra slow. Chicago, Atlanta, Toronto, Memphis, they're really fast. Everything else is sort of middle of the pack. But we're getting an ultra slow matchup here between Miami and Orlando. Obviously, Orlando's defense is really good, even missing the guys that they're missing. Miami's defense is solid. It's a top half defense. Terry Rozier is questionable. This is going to be a really tough one. We're going to need some news here. Rozier is questionable, and that's going to matter. Butler is doubtful to ever be in Miami again. I don't know. And then, obviously, over the past couple days, we learned Drew Smith torn Achilles, so he's going to be done for the year. So as I have it right now with Rozier in, the guy that you want the most is Tyler Hero. I think Miami looks a lot like Indy does in that previous game where, yeah, you can get Hero, you can get Bam, you can get some Terry Rozier if he's in. You could roll the dice on Jovic or Duncan Robinson. And maybe we get Rozier out and this looks a little bit better and we're getting Alec Burks or Jaime Jaquez potentially or Pelle Larson potentially. But we are running into a pace down spot. Miami loses 2.2 actually, below their average. That's not helpful. And they're going up against an Orlando team that, while they're missing major guys in Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner, and Paolo, their defense is still great. They still have their two-headed big monster that's out there. They lean, Suggs certainly leans defense. KCP obviously leans defense. So the defense is still hardy, and that makes it tough. But that Rozier Q tag will matter because there will be some value here for Miami if he happens to be out. If he happens to be in, you're probably focusing on him, Bam, and Hero. Nothing too crazy, especially for Hero and Bam. You're looking for 45 plus. It's not the easiest score in the world, but I think they do it like 20% of the time. So I'm happy to grab one of those guys. This is another thing that I want people to try to remember here. And maybe I could outline it a little bit better on my contenders table. Because when we talk about like recommendations and like how good people are, the context of this is really important. And I hope I could lay it out like this in the best way. These are my top 10s on DraftKings for right now. So I give this out every day, and I give 10 recommendations. These are my top 10 ranked guys. The amount of people that lose their minds because people suck out of this list just don't understand how this works. And I'm hoping I could explain it a little bit better here. This is where the math comes into it. Based on optimal rate. So there's only a total of 800%. Only one set of guys can be in the optimal at any particular time. The total of my optimal rates across my top 10 guys is 166%. What that's basically saying is that you could expect, will be generic here, 1.6, I mean technically 1.7 to round up. Just shy of 2 of these 10 guys would be expected to make an optimal lineup. So even the top 10 dudes on the slate, you would only expect, the most likely scenario is that 2 of these guys are in the optimal. A lot of 1s, a lot of none, some 3s, have been some 4s, but minimally. But 2 is essentially the most frequent. And that's where it starts to get scary. Now, we could talk about boom. Now, the way that I calculate boom is sort of similar to optimal. But instead of saying that it's just the optimal lineup, what I'm basically trying to figure out is who are the 16 best plays for the day? Basically 2 for every position that exists. Because you don't have to, in DFS, you don't have to have the optimal lineup. You don't even really have to be all that close. But if you're getting like the top 2 scorers from every position, that's going to be a great lineup. So these boom numbers actually total 1,600% for me, not the 800%. So double that. And based on those booms, and you can see the targets here, like Trae Young, 47% boom, 53%, 53-point target. Jordan Poole, 33% boom. So 1 out of every 3 times you expect him to go for like 46 fantasy points. The total of just the booms that I have, 322. So just even thinking, can I get guys that are good enough to be in optimal lineups or to be in winning lineups? The most likely scenario is you're only going to get 3 of these dudes, as these guys can be in any winning lineup. Sometimes you'll get 4, sometimes you'll get 2, but the most likely scenario is 3. And that's why this gets so hard. Because as good as we can say our top 10 is, the most likely scenario is that a couple of these guys are downright dreadful. A couple of these guys are right around their projection. And like 3 of them exceed their projection enough to get where you need to be. And that's why I don't like focusing on any individual guy. Because what you're really trying to do is maximize all of this stuff in the most unique way possible. How can you maximize optimal rate and boom rate and projection while also not taking all of the ownership possible? Create a unique lineup that differs slightly, that still offers you that same ceiling, that isn't getting you too far away from the highest projections you can get, but also still being unique. And that's why you're probably grabbing like 4 of these names and then cycling it, because these guys should probably be pretty heavily owned. And that's when you're cycling in your 5% guy that you think should be 10. One of those guys are filling out the bottom of the lineup. But we got to remember that no matter how good people look on a slate, even if you take my top 10 each day, we're really only going to expect to see 3 of these names look awesome. Remember that for context. I think it gets lost a lot. Like no matter who we recommend today, this will be a good example. Let's use Trevelyan Queen for Orlando, who's gotten the start in their last one, has moved into a bit much bigger rotation piece for Orlando now. Because no Paolo, no Franz, no Mo Wagner. Gary Harris, questionable. Eventually we're going to get him back. But let's look at someone like Trevelyan Queen. Now, I gave him 28 minutes. He's shooting guard only. He's 3,600. He's going to be pulling a pretty decent chunk of ownership today just because of the value, assuming he keeps his role. He's 15% optimal. He's in my top 10. He's 25% to get to 26 fantasy points. All that means is that he's 75% to not score 26 points. So you can be a top 10 play for today's slate, and 75% of the time, you're not getting a score that gets you where you want to be. Think like the fail rate is so frequent. We gotta try to unhook ourselves from what that means. But Queen is the guy you want here, assuming he's going to continue to start. Is he a good per minute guy? No. I got him at 0.75 fantasy points per minute. But he's 3,600. I went 28 minutes. He could definitely play more than that. And that kind of value is what unlocks your ability to get to your Sheas, your LaMelos, your Jaws, your Giannis's. That's what we want to be paying attention to. And that's sort of, you don't necessarily have to take massive stands on people, but the reason you try to sort of corner the market and you can see somebody get, 75% of Travell and Queen, because you still need to get the other 7 spots right. So maybe you want to consolidate on some of your best options and hope that you can just lock in 3 of those dudes having good games, and then you only need to go 5v5s for the rest of your stuff. It's always going to be hard. Today, I think the 2 best options for you from Orlando are guys that aren't good per minute guys, and that's KCP and Travell and Queen. They both got north of 10% optimal. I think it's really hard to get to Jalen Suggs at 7,800, but he's rosterable. Wendell Carter Jr. looks good at 5,300 because of that power forward eligibility. Tristan DeSilva's getting more minutes, but not a great per minute guy. Goga's still there at 6,500. He looks solid. But to me, the 2 guys you want to get to the most from Orlando are KCP and Travell and Queen. But they're a tough team to want to attack here just because of how low the total is and how low the pace is. We've got a lot better spots moving through the rest of this slate. For example, the Charlotte Hornets are 3.5-point favorites in Washington, 228 total. Brandon Miller continues to be questionable. I mean, this dude was supposed to come back, and now he's out even more because we got him back. Where's he hiding? He played 31 minutes on the 16th, and then we've had some Q tags for him that have disappeared, but out for the past 3 games. Maybe we get him back here today. If we do, not helpful for LaMelo, not helpful for Miles Bridges. I think if you're playing Charlotte today, you're paying closest attention to LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges, and really not much else. Now, the matchup is awesome because Washington stinks. But these guys have had pretty inflated pricing as of late. LaMelo is here. Miles Bridges is here. But with Brandon Miller having missed the last 3 games, you get minimal price bumps to your Josh Greens, your Cody Martins, your Misic's. What's that getting us? Because it's not value. I didn't get anybody other than Ball or Bridges to get north of a 5th. I didn't get anybody north of a 7% boom rate. That's a 93% chance Cody Martin doesn't get to 33 fantasy points. So this doesn't really feel like the team where you roll the dice for some additional guys. Like, for example, we talked about Orlando and how they're difficult. Look at the boom rates here on some of these Orlando guys. 14% to Suggs, 18 to Carter, 12 to DeSilva, 17 to Goga. But when we look at Charlotte, they're all really single digits outside of Bridges and Ball. So while we would have expected Charlotte to look a little bit better in this matchup against Washington, this total is 21 points higher. The per minute rates aren't as good. And the real takeaway here, and it's the piece that people miss the most, salary is everything. We all know that we only get $50,000 to spend on this lineup. When you have to spend an extra couple $100s on somebody, that's when you start seeing them not get great boom scores. Because if you got to spend $5,100 for a Cody Martin at 0.8 of a fantasy point per minute, he's not going to hit that boom all that frequently because he should probably be like 4,500. And we're going to see that 5,100 come down if Brandon Miller comes back for a couple games. So even in a great matchup, It's very difficult to want to get to anything from Charlotte. Now, for Washington, we really can't even talk about it right now. Bob Carrington's questionable. Koulibaly is questionable. Alex Sarr is questionable. Now, if they're all in, I'm very interested in Jordan Poole. It's a great matchup for him against Charlotte. He's 7,700, and he's playing big minutes as of late. They have really increased Jordan Poole's role. He's having a really nice season for what this team is. Poole's averaging 36 minutes a game over his last 5. He's at 34 over his last 10. I went 34. Well, we've been seeing him play 36 on basically every night, and this is a real game for them. Should be competitive. It's not a problem at all for him to get shots up. We all know he's going to take those. But we're talking about 28% usage. He's at 59.5% true shooting. That's 66th percentile. He's shooting 41% from 3 this season. Yeah, he's going to cough it up. Yeah, he's not going to get any rebounds. He is going to get some steals. He's very active defensively. He's not good defensively, but he's active defensively for the steals. So I want to get to a bunch of Jordan Poole at 7,700. One of my preferred options of the day today. So I hope you guys join me there. After that, it's pretty hard to want to talk about anything. Like, I'm going to like Poole no matter what happens for those guys. But I think Sarr looks really good at 5,400, power forward center eligible. We just need him to play. If he doesn't, we're looking at like Joe Val and Marvin Bagley in a different way. You can get some Koulibaly at 6,300 just because of the position. Chubb says Brogdon. I don't like it just because I never know what he's going to do from a minutes perspective. He seems kind of stuck at 25 right now, and anytime they stretch him out, it gets worse. Now, he's rosterable, don't get me wrong, but he's a tough priority for me. Maybe that's a little different if those 3 dudes end up out. Washington's just going to be more of a deeper dive conversation for later today. We've got basically 100 minutes with Q tags. We just need more information. And because of this game being a 7 o'clock start, we're going to have it. Now, before I go any further into the next couple games, I do want to remind you guys, the promo code is CELEBRATE. You can get our NFL Max package. That's everything we have on the NFL side. Projections, ownership, boom bust, all of our simulation tools, premium Discord. You get all of this. $179. That will cover you for the rest of the NFL season, all the way through the Super Bowl. We're talking showdowns, your weekend playoff slates, everything that exists. You will have access to it. You could run the sims for it. I wouldn't sleep on it. $179 is a deal. To run this all the way through February 9th, you come in right now. You get the rest of everything that's happening in the NFL all the way till the Super Bowl. A full month of January, whatever's happening in February, like you get a lot. $179 for every single day. You're basically what? How many days is that? 40 something? Around 50? We're talking about like $2 or $3 a day? $3 a day? Come on in, folks. Come on in. The water, it's fine. By the way, I got some gas station coffee today. Shit's like jet fuel. I don't, they must be sprinkling Coke on top of it. I have no idea. This is lighting me up. I'm jacked to the gills, and I got up at 4:30. Stupid dog. Maurice, thank you. Thank you. Pup's great. Pup's great. 3 poops today already. None of them in the house. Got a good one at like 5:30 a.m. Got another one at like 7:30 a.m. And per my wife, we got one like 20 minutes ago. So lots of good poops coming out of the puppy. He's getting so big. Getting so big. But he's been good so far. And my wife, I believe, left a couple minutes ago. I don't know if she's officially left. Maybe that's why I don't hear anything. But I think he's in his crate right now. And he's not screaming. And that is not something that typically happens. So either she hasn't left and I'm just not correct, or she has left and he might be finally shutting up. Give him a little bit of 7-Eleven coffee to try. John, if I gave him a sip of coffee, It might be like ADHD people taking Adderall, where like the speed slows down the guy that's already speeding up. Because this dude, when he's awake, he just does laps around the house. He's insane. When you get him to calm down, it's great. When he's jacked up, you can't tire him out. He's the man. He's the man. Shout out Keith. Shout out Keith. All right. Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks. I'm expecting people to like this one quite a bit for the environment it provides. Bulls are 6.5-point dogs in Atlanta. 243 total. For reference sake, this is 36 points higher than Miami and Orlando. Just for reference, I'm projecting 248 fantasy points to the Chicago Bulls. I'm projecting 213 to Miami. That means there's an extra 30 plus fantasy points that go to the Bulls that don't go to Miami. That's why these high pace, high total games end up looking disproportionately good. Give them a bone. Dude, if you guys could see my downstairs right now, there's not a single toy in the universe that doesn't exist for our dogs. There's at least 50 stuffed somethings, chewable bones, lick mats, frozen blobbity blahs. Everything that could exist for a dog exists in this house. And that little shit will rather chew on one of my dirty socks. All right, so for the Bulls, admittedly, they're a little tough to talk about right now. This is going to be more of a deeper dive team. Lonzo's doubtful. Dosunmu is questionable. Josh Giddey is questionable. Now, if everybody's in, Zach LaVine looks like your best option. Shooting guard, small forward, 7,100. But you can see I've got some okay boom scores to a couple of these guys. Oh, he's got a real bone. Don't worry. They exist too. It's all here. It's all here. We do not skimp on entertainment toys for these pups. We got, north of 20 boom on Levine, north of 20 boom on Vooch, 20 for White, 17 Giddey, 15 Dosunmu, even 10 for Patrick Williams. I want to get to pieces of Chicago. Give me 1 second. I got to respond to the old wifey. Wife's on the way to the barn, ride some ponies. Alrighty. Got my text out. She's taking my car. Her tires need air. Don't want her driving that, and I've been lazy to fill them up. Jake, how are you giving me that message? Are you in my messages? Are you in my messages? Jake, how did you know that? You're just over there refreshing, tipping me off? I got the same DM from our team. Almost verbatim, I might add. All right, I'm dropping in the data hubs. We can get our ownership in here. And shout out to the data team. Shout out Jason Wagner for getting this loaded. I know we were having some issues this morning. No matter. We're here. We got what we need. Let me refresh this. DraftKings ownership in. FanDuel ownership in. So for the Bulls, we're not really seeing much ownership, but we could, depending on the status of Dosunmu and Giddey. But even if they're not in, I like to target those main five guys. Levine, Dosunmu, Vooch, White, Giddey. I want to target those guys. In particular, Dosunmu, if he happens to be in, projected for 1% ownership, or Giddey, who's projected for 3%. but I want to have pieces of this game. It's not like anybody just separated from the pack. I think Levine is that guy. But I want to get this game just because of the amount of potential fantasy points that exist. And then we go to the Atlanta side. Also incredibly difficult to break down, but there's a lot of love coming in here. We're already projecting 30% ownership to Trey, 35 to Capella, and 20 to Jalen Johnson. Now, I love Trey today. He's my number one guy on DraftKings, but we don't know if he's in. And clearly this matters. Clearly this matters. But because if Trey's not in, we're going to have value elsewhere, whether that's Vit Krejci or Bogdan. If he ends up in, something else will pop if Trey ends up out. If he's in, this is where you want to be. 9,200, terrible defensive team in Chicago, a big pace up spot for Atlanta. If Trey's pulling 30% ownership, I think he deserves every bit of it because he's my number one guy, but he's got to be in. Now, Jalen Johnson is getting 22% ownership. This is fine. It's about where I think it should be. Clearly, he's going to look a little bit better if Trey is out. 36% ownership to Clint Capella feels a tad high. Now, he's my second most optimal guy from Atlanta. He's my second biggest boom score from Atlanta. You only need 34 fantasy points at 5,200. But we're going to have our share of center options today. 36 feels a little high, but he looks great. He's definitely a priority today. But it's a little dicey. Does he have the opportunity to fall into like 28 or 29 minutes? Of course, he does. That happens from time to time. I went 25. A little overowned, but looks really good. Looks really good. But I'd still like to get to Dyson Daniels, no matter who's in or out. I'd like to get a little bit of DeAndre Hunter, no matter who's in and out. I'm happy to get to Bogdanovich, no matter who's in or out. I think you could take a shot on Reese Shea at 3,500, regardless of who's in or out. But if these guys end up being out, every guy I just mentioned will look better. Toronto and Memphis. This is the other big total game. Raptors are 12.5 point dogs in Memphis, 239.5 total. The game we just talked about before, highest total, highest pace. This is second highest total, second highest pace. But for Toronto, it's kind of one and done, although I don't necessarily agree. So Jamal Shead is questionable, shouldn't really matter all that much. We have 20% ownership coming into Scotty Barnes at 9,100, guard forward eligibility. He is the best guy here for sure, but I'm not so confident RJ Barrett should be 2% owned when Scotty Barnes is 20. I don't have that separation nearly the same. Now, RJ Barrett is overpriced here a little bit, but I'm happy to take some shots at an unowned RJ Barrett here. I'd be willing to take some shots on an unowned Grady Dick. I'm willing to take a couple shots on Jonathan Mobo if he's unowned. Now, none of this is awesome. These guys are GPP pivots. But this is the game that I'd like to be pivoting to. Because if it stays competitive, the total implies that this is going to look good. This is a massive scoring day. So while nobody from Toronto outside of Barnes is really getting any love, this is a team that I would like to target in GPPs. Whether that's Barrett, Dick, Mobo, obviously Scotty Barnes. But I'd like to bring, if I'm going to get to some Toronto, I want to target this game. This is an interesting game to me based on that Toronto ownership. Dyson Daniels is very good on defense and very bad on offense. Will he ever be good enough on offense? We'll find out. Now for Memphis, we're getting some ownership in for this one. 45%, in fact, coming into Zach Edey. He's been playing more minutes. Edey played 27 in the past two games. Now, I only went to 26 here, but he's 5,100. He's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. Is he a little over-owned for me at 47%? Yes. Is he a fantastic point per dollar option at center today? Also, yes. Now, if I don't expect him to be 47 as we get more value today. I figure low 30s, probably where we end up. But he looks really good, and certainly one of the easier names to click on today from Memphis. But give me Ja. 8,500, 11% owned in this matchup with this total, even in 29 minutes. I think Ja Morant is underowned. I think Triple J is underowned, 8%. I have him 15% optimal. He's 7,200 power forward center. The power forward eligibility helps out quite a bit. I'm not all that interested in Desmond Bane, but Ja and Triple J, yes. Zach Edey, extra special, yes. Jalen Wells and Santi Aldama, rosterable, but not priorities. Brandon Clark is not in the same role. That's not a name that I would want to be clicking on all that much. Now that Edey is back, Clark has been marginalized. But Morant, Jackson, and Edey, yeah. You can get like 2 or 3 of these guys from this game. You get like Edey, Ja, and RJ Barrett, or Edey and Ja and Grady Dick. I like cornering the market a little bit on this Memphis and Toronto matchup. Now, from a 239 total and a 102 pace to a 212 total, 27 points down, and a 93 pace, I have this game 9 possessions slower than the game we just talked about. And that's going to make it really hard to get to Brooklyn. But unfortunately, we actually need Brooklyn news. Dorian Finney-Smith, as usual, questionable. Ben Simmons is questionable. Doesn't seem to be holding up under those 30-minute games. Now, if Ben Simmons is in, he's the only guy that got to double-digit ownership on DraftKings at 5,900, and he's the only guy that I think should have gotten to that point. Do I think that you could pick off individuals from this matchup? Yeah, but they're 10-point dogs, 212 total. Like, you can get a little bit of Cam Johnson, a little bit of DFS, some Ben Simmons. You can take shots on Jalen Wilson, Nick Claxton, Keon Johnson. There aren't any priorities coming from Brooklyn. We just have better spots out there today. But we need that Q tag on Simmons and Smith, because if those guys end up out, then we probably are looking a little bit more at Keon Johnson, at Shake Milton, at Jalen Wilson, potentially at Noah Clowney, 4,400. So we could have some value here for Brooklyn. We're just going to need their injury report. Milwaukee, slightly different. Pretty much impossible to talk about right now. You guys will understand. Q-tag Giannis, Q-tag Damian Lillard. Those two things are going to matter. Now, if they're all in, only Giannis got any ownership. I think he looks great at 11-3. I have him 14% optimal, 35% chance at 63 fantasy points. Not a huge stand here, though, for anybody else. If Giannis and Dame both play, you're probably not playing much of anybody from Milwaukee outside of Giannis. If one of those two guys play, you're playing a lot of the one that does. And that will change up what Milwaukee looks like. But we need that news. But if you can get one of them out and one of them in, the other dude is going to pop big time. We already know what Giannis looks like. So we've gotten a couple games with Dame out. But if Giannis sits and Dame is in, he's going to be a priority at 9,300. One quick thing, I want to hit the schedule before I go any further and we finish off this slate. 10:15 a.m. NFL Strategy Show with Laffy and Matt Kajeski, Thursday Night Football. NBA Deeper Dive. You get myself and Spags tonight breaking down this 7-game slate. 6 p.m. NBA Live Before Lock. Eric and Bellman will take you all the way up until 7. You're not going to want to miss that one. We're going to have a lot of news. And then Laffy and Greg, 7:15 Eastern Time, NFL Live Before Lock. We get to the final game of the DraftKings slate. Houston Rockets, 7-point favorites in New Orleans, 220 total. We do have a Q tag on Tari Eason. That will be pretty important. Dylan Brooks already out. We have 40% ownership coming into Amin Thompson. 15 to Van Vliet, 15 to Jalen Green, 15 to Şengün, 10 to Tari Eason if he's in. Only 1% to Jabari Smith. Wildly underowned to me. Should be 10%. Look where I have these guys. Look at these boom rates. 25, 21, 22, 29, 21, 25. That's Cam Whitmore, by the way. 4K, small forward, power forward eligible. If we don't get Eason, that'll look even better. If we do get Eason, I still think it looks decent. I gave him 22 minutes. We got a decent chunk out of him last time out with no Dylan Brooks. Whitmore played 27. I only went 22. 4K Cam Whitmore, small forward, power forward, fantasy point per minute. You're going to get a good bit of Cam Whitmore as a value option. But you got to be playing everybody here from Houston. Pelicans stink. We're getting 6 guys, 10% optimal or higher. 6 guys, 20% or higher in boom rating. There's not a team on this slate other than the Atlanta Hawks that has a higher aggregate boom rating. I want to get a lot of Houston. Probably at least one dude in every lineup that I'm putting out there. Jabari Smith is underowned. The rest of these guys are owned where they should be. You can make a case that Amen Thompson's a bit overowned, but he still looks really good. But whether Tari Eason is in or not, get yourselves a lot of Houston. For the Pels, they continue to be an absolute disaster to talk about. Alvarado out, Ingram out, Zion out, Q-tag Javonte Green, Q-tag Trey Murphy. I do think these guys look decent. You know, we're getting 15% ownership to CJ, a little over 10 for Yves Missi. We're getting 10 to Murphy, rather. Not that much to Jones and Murray. But you can see it here. Murphy, Jones, Murray, McCollum, Missi, starting 5, all 10% or higher in optimal rate. Most of these guys got to 20 to 25 in boom score. I think these guys are a little underowned and could look even better if Murphy and or Javonte Green end up out. But I like the Pelicans a little bit as a contrarian GPP team. They kind of remind me a little bit of Toronto. I would like to get a little bit more of the Pelicans than what everybody else is getting to. Not to mention, that will help a little bit with some late swapping if you wanted to try to get to a little bit more of Toronto and New Orleans. But those are the 7 games that are on the DraftKings slate. We can quickly take a look at Utah, Portland. This is FanDuel only. We have a Q tag on John Collins. We have a Q tag on Keontae George. The Jazz are 3-point dogs in Portland. We're getting a ton of ownership to John Collins. He's 30% owned on FanDuel, 6,900 power forward center. He looks great. Big boom score, big optimal score, top 10 guy for me on FanDuel. He's playing 34 minutes a night. We kind of just need him to be in, though, and we don't know that status. Same sort of theory for Keontae George. I think John Collins is an actual priority on FanDuel. Markkanen, Sexton, Clarkson, these are guys you can get to, but I don't think you prioritize any of them. That's why you're not seeing much ownership. What you are looking for, though, is John Collins. On the Portland side, Q-tag Banton, Q-tag Time Lord, single-digit ownership to everybody, single-digit optimal rates for everybody. I think all of these guys are like 7% type dudes. The guy you want the most is probably Ayton at 6,600, but it's only one center on FanDuel, so that's a little complicating. But you could take your shots on Sharp and Simons and Grant, but there are no priorities here from Portland, even in a matchup where defense does not exist for the Utah Jazz. And then finally, last game on the FanDuel slate, Detroit and Sacramento. Pistons are 5-point dogs, 227 total. Q-tag Isaiah Stewart, Q-tag Ron Holland, single-digit ownership to everybody on FanDuel. Cade is up to 10K, but I do have him 11% optimal. You can make a case he's underowned. Duren looks okay. Can get you to 35, but again, you're only getting one center spot on FanDuel, so that makes it tough. We're not getting any love here for the Detroit Pistons, and I'm not all that surprised by it. Nobody stands out. And then obviously Sacramento, an absolute dumpster fire, but we are getting quite a bit of ownership to Malik Monk. I don't find it deserved at all. 6,900, point guard, shooting guard, 27% owned. No thanks. You can't separate Fox, Sabonis, Monk, and DeRozan. They're 11, 12, and 13% optimal. They're all in the 20 to 28% boom rate. Why would Malik Monk get 27% ownership? Fox gets 7, Sabonis gets 2, DeRozan gets 11. Totally disagree. This should be flat. I would get away from Monk to get to more of Fox or Sabonis. The matchup is certainly good for them. Offensively, they're going to be fine. Defensively, they're going to be awful. I don't really care much about defense from a DFS perspective. So I want some of these starters from Sacramento, but I don't want Monk as much as the public does. I do want Fox and Sabonis more than the public does. Keep in mind, Domantas Sabonis is questionable. If he ends up out, Trey Lyles is going to look a lot better, and we probably see a little bit of Alex Len. Or maybe we get, Isaac Jones? But as of right now, most of the ownership's coming in Malik Monk, and I'm not sure I see it that way. That's 9 games. We're at the top of the hour. Another strategy show in the books, guys. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button on your way out the door. NFL strategy show at 10:15. You don't want to miss it. If you want to catch this show in any other medium, you could listen to it on any podcast feed. This goes up immediately after we're done. I'm going to see you guys again later today on the Deeper Dive. We'll have a lot more news to break down. Myself and Spags have got you guys covered. Good luck, everybody. I'll talk to you later.